On March 29, 2012, the quiet town of Aurora, Indiana, was shaken to its core by a heinous crime that would leave its residents reeling for years to come. Leigh Jennings, a beloved 67-year-old barber, was found brutally murdered in her apartment, the victim of a savage attack that shocked even seasoned law enforcement officials. The man responsible for this horrific act was Steve Stephenson, a 58-year-old resident of Walton, Kentucky, whose desperate need for money led him to commit an unthinkable crime against someone who had shown him nothing but kindness. Leigh Jennings was a 67-year-old woman who lived a quiet life in Aurora, Indiana. She worked as a barber at Young's Barber Shop in Florence, her hometown, where she was known for her friendly demeanor and skilled hands. Jennings was not just a dedicated professional, but also a caring daughter. She lived next door to her elderly mother and spent much of her time taking care of her, demonstrating her compassionate nature. Jennings was described by those who knew her as a kind and trusting individual. This trust, unfortunately, would ultimately lead to her untimely and tragic demise. She had developed a friendship with Steve Stephenson, whom she had met through her work at the barber shop. Little did she know that this relationship would prove fatal. Stephenson, known to many as Steve, was a 58-year-old man from Walton, Kentucky. On the surface, he appeared to be an ordinary individual, but beneath this facade lay a man grappling with financial troubles and a growing desperation. Stephenson had found himself in a precarious financial situation. He owed money to his aunt, Faye Sparks, as a result of a court-ordered debt. In December, a Boone County court had mandated that Stephenson pay Sparks $500 each month. However, Stephenson had fallen behind on these payments, putting him in a difficult position. The pressure on Stephenson intensified when, on March 26, 2012, Sparks' attorney informed him that he needed to pay $1,000 he owed by March 30th. This ultimatum set in motion a chain of events that would culminate in the brutal murder of Leigh Jennings. Jennings and Stephenson had met through Jennings' work as a barber. Over time, they had developed what appeared to be a friendship. Stephenson was known to Jennings' family members only as Steve, and they were aware that Jennings had made several investments with him. Unbeknownst to her family, Jennings had loaned Stephenson money on separate occasions. She had given him $3,000 at one point and $2,000 at another, facts that Stephenson initially denied to the police. This financial relationship between the two would prove to be a crucial factor in the events that unfolded. Jennings, in her trusting nature, had also confided in Stephenson about a safe in her home where she kept cash. This information would later play a significant role in the motive for her murder. On March 29, 2012, Leigh Jennings spent her day as she often did, taking care of her elderly mother. She had taken her mother, who lived in the apartment next door, to a doctor's appointment. It was a typical day for Jennings, filled with the acts of kindness and care that characterized her life. That evening, Jennings had plans to have coffee with Stephenson. She informed her mother of these plans, assuring her that she would return afterwards. Tragically, this would be the last time Jennings' mother would see her daughter alive. Stephenson, driven by his desperate need for money, had formulated a sinister plan. He purchased a pizza and turned off his cell phone on his way to Jennings' apartment, actions that investigators would later interpret as attempts to establish an alibi and avoid detection. The details of what transpired in Leigh Jennings' apartment on the evening of March 29, 2012 are both shocking and heartbreaking. Stephenson, a man Jennings had considered a friend, unleashed a brutal attack on the unsuspecting woman. In a horrifying turn of events, Stephenson used unlikely objects as murder weapons, a pepper grinder and a large iron skillet. The choice of these household items as weapons adds an element of chilling premeditation to the crime, suggesting that Stephenson had not brought a weapon with him, but rather seized upon objects available in Jennings' home. The attack was violent and merciless. Jennings suffered severe blunt force trauma to her skull, which ultimately caused her death. The brutality of the assault was evident in the crime scene, which investigators would later describe as disturbing and blood-splattered. After the murder, Stephenson's actions revealed the true motive behind his heinous act. He accessed the safe in Jennings' home, which she had previously told him about, and stole an undetermined amount of cash. This theft clearly indicated that financial gain was the driving force behind Stephenson's actions. In a cruel twist, Leigh Jennings' body was not discovered immediately after the murder. It wasn't until a week later, on April 5th, that neighbors found her deceased in her apartment. The delay in discovering the crime allowed Stephenson time to attempt to cover his tracks and even fulfill his financial obligation. The day after the murder, on March 30th, Stephenson appeared at his aunt's lawyer's office to turn in a $1,000 money order. The lawyer later reported to the police that Stephenson had appeared disheveled, as though he had been on an all-night bender. This observation would later become a crucial piece of evidence in the case against Stephenson. When Jennings' body was discovered, law enforcement immediately launched a thorough investigation. The crime scene painted a gruesome picture of the events that had transpired. Investigators noted a large amount of blood splattered throughout the kitchen and dining room. The crime scene presented a gruesome tableau, with blood splattered throughout the kitchen and dining room, indicating a violent struggle. The murder weapons, a pepper grinder and an iron skillet, were found at the scene, both bearing traces of Jennings' blood and Stephenson's DNA. This forensic evidence was pivotal in linking Charles Stephenson to the crime, providing a clear connection between the suspect and the violent act. Witness testimonies played a crucial role in piecing together the events leading up to the murder. Jennings' family members revealed that she had loaned Stephenson money on 2 occasions, totaling $5,000, and had confided in him about the cash she kept in a safe at her home. This information established a potential motive for the crime, as Stephenson was under significant financial pressure to repay a court-ordered debt to his aunt. On the night of the murder, Jennings had planned to have coffee with Stephenson, a detail she mentioned to her mother, who lived next door. This interaction placed Stephenson at the scene of the crime during the critical time frame. Stephenson's suspicious behavior following the murder. On the morning after the crime, Stephenson appeared disheveled and anxious when he delivered a $1,000 money order to his aunt's lawyer, fulfilling his debt obligation just in time. This act, coupled with his admission of cleaning out his car after the murder, suggested an attempt to destroy potential evidence. As the evidence mounted, Charles Stephenson quickly became the prime suspect in Leigh Jennings' murder. He was initially held in Boone County, Kentucky, on charges of tampering with evidence and drug possession. The tampering with evidence charge stemmed from Stephenson's admission that he had cleaned out his car sometime after the murder occurred, an action interpreted as an attempt to destroy potential evidence. In Indiana, Dearborn County prosecutor Aaron Negengard announced the charges against Stephenson in a press conference. Stephenson was charged with murder and robbery. The robbery charge was significant as it made Stephenson eligible for the death penalty under Indiana law. The trial of Charles Stephenson for the murder of Leigh Jennings began in May 2013. The prosecution presented a compelling case. Leveraging the substantial physical evidence and Stevenson's suspicious behavior following the crime. Key pieces of evidence included: Point 1. DNA evidence linking Stephenson to the murder weapons. 2. The presence of Jennings' blood in her safe, supporting the robbery motive. 3. Stevenson's appearance and behavior the day after the murder when he paid his aunt for his admission to cleaning his car, interpreted as destroying evidence. The defense faced an uphill battle against the mountain of evidence presented by the prosecution. Despite their efforts, the jury found the case against Stephenson convincing. In May 2013, after careful deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. Charles Steve Stephenson was found guilty of beating Leigh Jennings to death with a skillet and a pepper grinder. The conviction led to a sentencing hearing where the judge would determine Stephenson's fate. Given the brutality of the crime and the fact that it was committed during a robbery, prosecutors had the option to seek the death penalty. However, after consideration of all factors, the court sentenced Charles Stephenson to life in prison without the possibility of parole. This sentence ensured that Stephenson would spend the remainder of his life behind bars, never again posing a threat to society. The murder of Leigh Jennings sent shockwaves through the small community of Aurora, Indiana. The brutal nature of the crime, coupled with the betrayal of trust it represented, left many residents feeling vulnerable and shaken. Ryan Sieb, a family member of Leigh Jennings, spoke on behalf of the family following Stephenson's arrest. While expressing relief at the arrest, he poignantly noted that the family still deeply missed Leigh. His statement, "At this time we're comfortable in allowing the legal process to begin and we'll see what the results are," reflected the family's cautious optimism for justice. The case also had a significant impact on local law enforcement. The successful resolution of such a heinous crime demonstrated the effectiveness of their investigative techniques and interdepartmental cooperation. It served as a grim reminder of the importance of their work in maintaining public safety. The murder of Leigh Jennings by Charles Stephenson is a tragic tale that highlights several important issues. 1. The vulnerability of trust. Leigh Jennings' trusting nature, which led her to befriend and even loan money to Stephenson, ultimately contributed to her demise. While trust is a fundamental aspect of human relationships, this case serves as a stark reminder of the potential dangers of misplaced trust. 2. Financial desperation and crime. Stephenson's mounting debts and financial pressures drove him to commit an unthinkable act. This aspect of the case underscores the potential for financial stress to push individuals to extreme actions. 3. The importance of forensic evidence. The conviction of Stephenson relied heavily on DNA evidence and other forensic findings. This case exemplifies the crucial role that scientific evidence plays in modern criminal investigations and prosecutions. For community impact, the murder had a profound effect on the Aurora community, shattering the sense of safety in a small town. It serves as a reminder that such crimes can occur anywhere, even in seemingly peaceful communities.